Gway, hello, hi, friends and relatives. It is moi, Raymond Jordan Johnson Brown, and welcome to another glorious episode of The Glorious Mess, featuring once again our season 1 guest, icon, sister, dancer, artistic director, fellow mess, chronic pain surviving child. I can't say that. But really excited to have this cradle robber, amazing guest to talk about what season 2 is all about, which is what are the many pathways that people use to heal. There are so many different ways in this world, and we often get told like, oh, if you want to heal, you got to go to therapy, and that's the only route. But those of us who've spent time healing know that that doesn't always work, and sometimes we need things that are more in the body, somatic. Maybe we need things that are more hypnotic, if you will. So we'll get into that a bit with Bronwynn today. But let's just start by saying, hey, Bronwynn.
What's up?
How are you?
Thank you for having me. I absolutely love your podcast, and honestly, I like the way my voice sounds, so it's nice.
Perfect. I'm glad. And like when we talk about this T word, we have to trigger warning, the T word, trauma. What does trauma mean to you? How would you define it?
Oh, damn. I mean, I think if I'm being completely blunt, I think the word trigger and the word trauma has become almost like a word that we're just throwing around now. Like it's become like this thing that we're using a lot more of. But I do think that that trauma is different for everybody. Like I don't think there's, I don't know, one is real trauma and one's not. Like I feel like society, or even as like ourselves, we get into like, oh, like I've had, shitty shit happen to me, but it's not as bad as it could have been. So then a lot of the times I think people, society wise, like push it to a side or don't acknowledge, that it's real. But I think traumatic experiences happen to everybody in different ways. But I know trauma for me is just when it could happen physically, or it can happen spiritually, or it could happen mentally. For me, it sometimes takes me a long time to process that it was a traumatic event, or whether it's to do with another person, or a life change, or physically in my body, especially as somebody that I'm very self-aware to the point where I maybe over logicalize. Is that a word? It is now.
Let's make it one.
Things. Yeah. So like I'll be like, oh well, this happened because of X. I'm feeling this because of that. And then I don't acknowledge it. And then, you go down 10 years and you're like, why can't I love people? Oh, because that thing.
Because that thing that we had happen at one time. It happens, and it comes up, like it always comes up in relationship, and not necessarily like romantic relationships, but in relation. And we're these like human beings who are built to be in relation to one another. And at the same breath, living and being in relation to one another is hella triggering.
It's a mirror, right? It's
a
mirror. All your shit gets thrown back at you, whether or your reaction to things really shows where you are with certain things, or healing wise. If you're carrying stuff that happened with another person into something else, I mean, I'm still having things come up for me that was from an ex-best friend that I had in like my current friendship that I have with somebody. And I've had to realize and be like, you don't respond like her. I apologize, but this is all the things that I'm feeling because X. And then sometimes you just need the other person to be like, it's not real. Like what you're fearful of is not real.
No, and that's I even say like too in my romantic relationship, sometimes the stories I make about him are like about that who from Calgary, who shall not be named. But like I hear myself creating a version of the person. Fred actually sent me a meme the other day, and it was like when you realize he's actually a good dude and you're just a little bit crazy. And I was like, yeah.
Story of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's me.
Yep.
And I think the beauty is like when you start to become aware of them, then you can actually like start to shift and change it. And when you can be open and safe enough, like I know in your friendship you're talking about, like it's such a safe relationship and a safe, comfortable
Oh my
space for you.
God.
And
Yes.
like that level set in relationship where it's like comfort and safety, like that's
And
how
emotional safety.
yeah, like that's I think the more open I get about my neurotic stories and things, then the more better, the more better I think. And then when I'm open about them, I'm not pretending like, oh, I have to be this ideal self to be in this relationship. I just have to be myself. And when I can be myself, then we can come together and find a pathway forward that works for everyone.
Yes.
And
Do you find that when you share your like your neurotic stories that they seem less, like as you're speaking to them, you're like, I know, like they seem less real, like in a
yeah.
good way, like you're kind of telling them, they almost decastrophize it all in your head, because it kind of feels like you're like, I know that this is 98% sure that this is not happening. And then you
Mhm.
kind of, I don't know, I find that sometimes when I over like share them, I'm like, I just need you to be like, this is not happening. You are a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit sus, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's I think I have to like sometimes I'll ask the like, is it okay if I ask this? And try to buffer it because I think you have to like mutually respect the other person enough to be like, okay, like I think sometimes there's a tendency to like have a thought and need to like speak to it in that moment and like the immediacy because you don't want to sit with the discomfort and like I talk about discomfort all the time and like we were raised and conditioned in this society that like prioritized feeling good all the time, feeling comfortable all the time and when we're not, then there's a problem. But I'm like, no, actually there isn't a problem. There just is. There just is. There's experiences that you're going to go through, your relationships are going to bring things up for you. And I think your success as a human, and when I say success, I mean your inner peace, your balance, your wellness is best maintained when you're able to, how do I want to word that? Your inner peace is best able to be maintained, I think, when you're able to, wow, I completely lost the thought. And I think it was a gem.
Communicate them.
Communicative, when you can sit, sorry, with discomfort, like when you can sit with both and accept it as it is. That's where your peace really is. When you can acknowledge, hey, this feels uncomfortable and it's temporary and I don't have to act on it right now, but it is
Or
valid.
try and fix it.
Yeah, or try, yeah, like try, because when you try to fix something and you want to fix it now and you feel this rush for urgency, like it's the same as, I mean, it is a trauma response of like fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like it's when you're like, I have to fix this, I have to fix this. You're like, no, what if I just like accept that, okay, I am human and this totally rationally makes sense and that's okay. But then how do we and that's why like when we talk about these different pathways, like we've had so many different kind of experiences and things that have worked for people. And I'm curious, I'm like, because obviously you have had some great experience with hypnotherapy and I still need to make my appointment. I don't know why I'm so resistant to it. Actually, do you want to know my resistance? Did I tell you this?
I would love to. Let's talk about
Let's
this.
talk about that. So I did an EMDR like somatic session back in February 2022, like when I was going through that panic phase and I wasn't sleeping and it was really, and so we did a somatic and when I went into that deep meditative space, it triggered a panic attack and I didn't like that discomfort. So I think ever since you introduced this concept to me, I feel much more, despite everything, I feel much more grounded and content to be able to like face that. But I think my resistance to it has been my fear that it's going to put me in such a deep state that I'm not going to be able to handle or that I'm not going to be comfortable with. And at the time, and for the last, I was like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I was like, I'm already uncomfortable enough just living.
Living. Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting. I just had I want to say last session, because I'm sure I'll revisit. But the person that I've seen is Michael Edwards. He's been incredible, and known me for a really long time. For those of you listening, check him out.
Yes.
But so we recently just did, so it's like RTT essentially. And so the first 2 sessions I did was what you're familiar with, like this deep meditation or meditative state. There's like a pre-audio that you listen to, you visualize yourself going down to stairs, and it's kind of like a quick, like, okay, go, you come with these feelings. For me, it was like I wanted to, I've had this deep rooted belief that I wasn't lovable, and a lot of shame with who I was. And I just felt shame all the time. Turns out I was also undiagnosed with ADHD, so that's like all comes together. But
put it all together.
It's like, oh, anxiety, depression, just ADHD. Cool. Okay, tangent. Here we go. Anyway, so the 80s or the session was really cool because he would just be like, okay, drop into the first time that you felt this feeling. 3, 2, 1. Are you inside, outside, inside? Who's there? And you kind of just, you don't have time to have your subconscious is answering for you, where a lot of the time when we're in talk therapy, especially for me, like, I am very self-aware. I know, and you get to a point where you've been telling yourself your shit for like however old that you've been alive. You're like, oh well, it's my childhood thing, and this happened, and you believe the stories that you have actually been internally mapping for X amount of years, that you don't actually know what was real in that moment and what is your memory, right? And so when you get to these states, you're kind of have like some of the answers that I was saying, I was like, there was still that conscious part of me that was like, I've never said that before, but it was just my gut and my intuition like saying these things. And then you would fast forward to, okay, when in your teenage or your young adult life, when did you feel that feeling? Okay, when was the most recent time that you felt that feeling? And then he would take you through to those scenarios and actually heal you through each of those things, where, for example, like in this childhood session for me, he said, visualize yourself now coming and taking you out of that scenario and saying XYZ. And then, oh my God, I was a mess. I was like, I'm so sorry, just like on Zoom, like being like, you're safe now. And then he actually ended up picturing myself taking the younger version of me into my apartment, into my current life, and showing her around. And that was like the first time I felt so much pride into like actually how the life that I am creating, and that trust that like I'm the adult that can care for my inner child. Like I have me. There's a bit more of that inward strength kind of from there. So that was my first session.
And also it sounds like, and I remember when you called me after the first few sessions, but like,
yeah,
it's when the problem with media in so many ways is we see hypnosis as this like loss of control moment, and they've taken over.
I was present the entire time, for sure.
Exactly. And you're really just rewiring narratives that are constant,
exactly,
and then re-experiencing them, and then allowing yourself to reprocess them.
Yes, reprocess them and reprogram. And so then what's really beautiful at the end of that session, because my mom actually used to say this a lot to me, just change the tape. So like if you have this running dialogue in your flinch, she'll literally be like, just change the tape. What else can you be saying about this scenario? What different reality and perspective can you be giving yourself right now? And so
shout out to Pip. Shout out to Pip.
So I was already kind of familiar with that idea. But then what would happen is he'll recap your session and be like, you are loved, you are, you are strength, and you were feeling this, but now remember you're feeling this. And then you listen to that recap for 21 days after. And you can listen to it before you're going. So you're literally like rewiring your subconscious or your neural pathways to have this kind of healing, thought process or behavior. And it gets to a point where like I was going about my life, and all of a sudden things just kept flowing a little bit easier. And then, it's so subtle, but then there would be some days where something would blow up and I would be very unbothered by it. And then I would reflect being like, shit, if that had happened X months ago, that would have wrecked me, and then, so that's when you have those kind of little, like, I think something's actually shifted. And but actually this is interesting that when you shared your fear about the process, he actually does something different now, where it's less of a meditative state and there's no pre-recording or after recording. I believe it's still called RTT, but I just had this last session, and to me, because the first couple of sessions worked so well, I was like, what do you mean I'm just gonna sit here and talk to you? Like, this shit doesn't work for me. Like, I was kind of pissed. I was like, what do you mean we're gonna sit here and talk about, because I was so conscious. I was like, I feel embarrassed talking about this issue, whatever. And then he just is able to, like, it's hard to explain. When you meet people that are just meant to be doing exactly what they're fucking doing, like,
Yeah.
this man is so in his purpose with this shit. I can't even explain it. And I was feeling all this resent, and he just started asking these perfectly directed questions that kind of just like chipped away at this, literally probably this piece of the puzzle that I've been holding on to since I was 16 years old, of this ideology about myself. And
Wow.
and then at one point he was just like, have you allowed yourself to physically mourn and grieve the amount of disrespect and hurt people have given you?
Ooh.
Because it's like, that may have happened years ago. You may have mentally moved on from it, especially as, again, I'm somebody that I see all sides. I'm very much like, I understand where they're coming from. He's like, but you're allowed to be hurt and like sit in that. And I literally, for the rest of the call, I just sat there for probably like 15 minutes and was like, like, I just felt everything just unlock and like, like get released from my body. And there's still moments, like, that was probably at the beginning of October. And so there were still moments throughout October that I was like feeling a bit raw, but I felt, weird things. And I was sad, like I was grieving that, a really traumatic relationship that I had gotten out of. And, but then it was kind of beautiful because then I had somebody in my life that was like kind of coming in at the same time. And I was now able to like receive that without being like, I don't deserve it, or I'm damaged, or, so it's interesting because I think there's, so yes, the hypnotherapy was really big, but it was interesting to get into a space where it was the same type of quick response questions, and asked in a way that was, got really mad at him for poking the bear. And then I was like, fuck, he's right. Or like, I felt this, I think a lot of the time in therapy, we get so stuck up in here
In the
trying
mind.
to like make it make sense, or like over therapize the process, where like it's in your gut. Like for me, when he said something that my brain was like, that's not true, my whole, like, I felt in my stomach almost, and I was just like, like, oh my god, like I felt that kind of, shifting. So it's really interesting. I mean, personally, I found that because I did talk therapy for a while too, and I found, I'm not going to say it made me worse, but I did find that I started to over therapize like every little behavioral thing I was doing in life. Like I was like, well, what's real? Like what's actually my authenticity? Or like nothing's, so I just started to get really up here. Like the people that do that once a week, like if it's working for you, like no shade, but like, oh my God, I just lived up here. I was actually like going insane.
That's the thing. Like if you need to be, I think you always need to be in a balanced way, right? So it's like whatever that balance looks like for you. But I think traditional talk therapy, Western medicine is very reliant on the mind solely. And then we wonder why so many people are having these neurodivergent experiences. Well, because we've built a society that's like hyper reliant on the mind and like has forgot about the body, forgot about each other, forgot about so many of these pieces. So yeah, this invites like an opportunity to just kind of reset. Now I'm like, I need to book mine. Damn, I'm gonna go book it right now.
And so I think, and I also was doing a few of like so after my first 2 sessions, we were talking, and I was like, I kind of don't know where to. I feel like I have all these big ideas, and I don't know, like mind you, I am missing my executive function as somebody who's neurodivergent. So like
Valid,
that's
yeah.
also part of it. So
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to be gentle with myself. But like I was like, I need more therapy because like that's why I'm not getting career success how I want. And he actually was like, I think you actually need like mentorship and coaching, like
Ah.
instead. And so I did do that for a while. So like this is just something to say, like a lot of the time we think that it's our trauma or our this event or this thing that's happened in your life that's like holding you back. And I think sometimes we beat that into the ground, like that's the thing that's like, the thing that's fucking my life up. And I think a lot of the time is we can talk about the behaviors that maybe have come out of that or the protection or the measures that we've hold on to. But I think a lot of the time you need to I recommend like releasing it from your physical body. Like there's been so much trauma just held in my nervous system that like for years, like for probably like the last decade. And so a lot of the time, like once you have that physical release, it almost like removes a big huge cloud from all the other little neurobehavioral things that you've been picked up. Or like that one time when you were in grade 8, someone told you that you had a shitty work ethic, and now you have a shitty work ethic. Like you've been telling yourself
On
that
loop.
you have a shitty work ethic for like the last 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever read the Untethered Soul? I think I always tell you this, but have you read it yet?
No, I downloaded it as an audiobook though. It's like on my
Okay, we're
list.
getting there. No, listen, you just listen to like a 5 minute clip and you'll be like, like, but it talks about this again, this idea, like these things, these moments happen. And so if they happen at times in our lives where our energy gets stored in the body, just like how the earth is, this energy is cyclically existing and causing pain, causing disconnect, causing things. And so anytime, and it can live there peacefully for a while and you don't even notice it, but it builds up. And if there's many energy stores, then they get triggered, they get activated by relationship and things. And so then when they come up, then they become real all over again, and you experience it in your body. And so the way to do it is you have to find ways to move through them, right? Like you said, like you need to release, but the body keeps the score. The body holds on to so much. And then we wonder, like I know you have like your chronic like pain, and like and we think pain is musculature, and it is, but it's also perception of pain.
Yeah, I will say that since I kind of started to heal both things together, and there used to be like a very big disconnect between like my personal, my professional life, or my mental and my physical health. And I do feel like a lot of the times I will actually look for signals in my body before I check in with my mind, because I'm really smart and really aware emotionally. And so sometimes I can like convince myself to like react a certain way or push something down, as we all are. And so
Yeah.
now I actually will be like, is my nervous system turned on in like fight or flight mode? Or do I feel kind of like my dad used to call it the inner voice or whatever, which I know for a fact I numbed out for years. And so, but since then, my flare ups haven't been as bad. I'm a little bit more stable. And like, I've had a really fun summer. Like, I haven't been eating clean. Like, I haven't, like the check engine light's been on. But if you're looking at the lot or like the history, I should be kind of fucked up right now. But I actually feel really good. And so I'm a firm believer that it's all energy. Like you're taking in energy from the outside world, you're putting it into your body, and you're releasing it again. And so if all this is like symbiotically connected, it's like I think a lot of that inner peace comes from that, and you hear about a lot of people saying, I don't feel like I'm meant to be in my body. And that's a separate conversation for like gender and stuff. But I mean like people that are disassociated from like feeling in their body. Like I talk about a lot of that with my students. A lot of people like, when I'm dancing, I just don't feel like it's mine. Like I'm just kind of existing, or I can't drop into it today. And a lot of the times, like when you have a busy mind, we always say, get out of the head and get into the body. Sometimes
Literally.
you don't have to solve everything up here. Like stand up and physically just like shake.
Literally. Oh my God. Shaking has become my new favorite thing. Like just
Just gyrating.
and it's like, And there's like a when if you ever see like I was reading in a book one time, it's like uh kids naturally in a fear response when they're regulating, they shake.
Mm,
But we like condition the shaking out of the kids because societally it looks weird. And so you see kids with different neuro experiences, and like they'll shake and they'll move to release. I remember my thing was like when my mom would talk to me about something when I was a teenager, I would like full full choreo. She's like, "Your hamster's dead," and I'm like, "Yeah," like, but it had to release, it had to move, and
yeah.
if it's only in the mind, no fucking wonder all these issues and these barriers come up because there's
It's
the
an
responsibility we
organ.
have is to be balanced, and we have responsibility to be balanced mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Like we that's like the medicine wheel teachings, right? And these four states of being. But it's like it's true for everyone regardless of your DNA, that like you have to balance this wheel. We live on a freaking circle. everything
Just so
everything
you all
is
know, the
cyclical.
earth is round. Okay? There's still people out there that are
I
confused.
I heard that there's a trend right now on TikTok of flat earthers, like it's a big thing again.
Yes. I hate
Like
the internet. I really do.
it's a scary place. It's a scary place, and it's a beautiful place too. Like I also get so excited by like your experiences with ADHD. Like a lot of that you learned from social media, right? Like a lot of understanding. Like yeah. Like no, then you went the path to figure it out. But like initially, you started to see like
Totally.
posts and be like, oh, that's what I experience, and you find like
I had no idea. Like, no idea.
you find empowerment through community. I think that's the cool thing about like technology, but yeah, some of the yeah, our foundation of our world, like I was at the Montreal. It was with you. I was with you in Montreal. Remember when we saw like the creation of the planet was like built on chaos, and I was like, and then when we look at like the lands we're on, like people are like, I think my mom actually sent to me. She's like, do you think people need to protest and be so violent and angry? I'm like, honestly, we were built on violence. Like all of our lives, white, black, brown, like even if you are a white person who experiences privilege because the system has prioritized whiteness as a measure of success, the same breath in your body, the violence and the disregard you have to have those early colonizers and violent people would have had to have done to be okay with doing such harms, that toll is also intergenerational trauma. Like when I hear people say like I'm a settler, or these things, I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you then are negate, like you still have a experience of intergenerational trauma, because to have been that, again, to do these atrocities to human beings, it was violent, and I don't care what you say, it had to have weighed on people. They had to work so hard to justify their own actions in their brain to say that this was an okay thing through misinformation and lies. And so I said that is like, it's a weight. It's a
Yeah.
because you had no
It's a
control
burden.
over it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Right. Shake.
Shake, yeah, literally. When all else fails, that's the hashtag for this episode. Shake, just because,
Yeah, I mean,
and shake everywhere. Shake on the bus. Shake.
there's actually I found this great thing. I can't remember what profile it was, but it was actually like physical responses, like if you're feeling anxious, do this movement. If you're feeling angry, do this movement. And it was just kind of the energy connected to moving the energy source around of your body when you're feeling a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, at the end of the day, though, like I feel like also what's kind of happening is like being healed and healing is kind of trendy right now as well. Like I think people are capitalizing on this, like especially in white spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Even,
Karen's out
even,
there being
even
like
like
sound baths.
even Jay, Jay Shetty, the like Buddhist, like really wise. He's being criticized harshly right now too for like commodifying. But again, when you look at wellness in a sick world that has commodified human beings, of course it's going to happen, right? These values of wellness is
How else are people going to like you kind of almost like there's a bit of a chicken and the egg, you know, like you have to kind of be selling it in order for people to even hear it or pay attention. You have to make TikTok videos of it, or you have to get online to like promote X, Y, you know, it's such a, you know, baked in with the good and the bad and the ugly, you know, to do anything in this world. But I mean, I guess all I could say for people is like, you can create your own rule book or a book of like what works for you. Like stay curious.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no wrong or right way as long as you're not like physically harming others to heal. I think there's, you know, staying curious about it and just trying shit. Like fuck, if you're feeling stressed and you need to physically shake on the bus or like start doing like breaths just to like fuck it, like we're all alive and then we're gonna die and then move on spiritually or whatever you believe in. And at the end of the day, like fuck living so you fit in so that you can, you know, be considered normal or like not draw attention to yourself. Like do whatever you need to do to live as expansive and as beautiful and bold as you need to like make the most time here
Of this time. Yeah, you've got this
on
limited. You got this much time, really.
I'm yeah, like a blip.
A blip. In the span of this earth, its existence, like you have this blip. So like you better live the fuck out of that blip.
Yeah, I mean, I'm approaching 30 and I'm already being like, what? I'm sorry.
Midlife crisis.
I have not lived.
But let's
Also,
remember why. Why do we have these preconceived stories? See, we need to go to hypnotherapy and get fucking back on it. But we have these preconceived ideas and notions of what 30 means. You know, 30 meant we were supposed to be married, we were supposed to have kids, we needed to own our house and then have our job.
Yeah, right. In this economy, I'm gonna live in a treehouse.
Oh my god, yeah, in Vancouver, I will say, like, I could probably buy something in Montreal. I will say, thank you, Montreal. But I probably couldn't friggin' sign the contract because it'll be in French.
And commitment. We don't do good with those.
No,
commitment exactly. And in French.
I prefer just cheap rent so I can have the freedom. But they're right, like build your own, write your own book, choose your own terms of reference, try something outside of the box. The reason why things like hypnotherapy are less considered in healing terms is because we've all been conditioned in a world that if it's empirical, if I can see it, if research has justified its existence, then it is successful. But that's not true because if something works for someone, it is successful.
It's real.
And then the second thing too, find helping professionals. And I don't know if you made this connection, but I made it on your behalf while you were speaking, is like, find helping professionals for your journey who you have a stable trust and healthy relationship with. Because I think your practitioner has had so many versions of you and you've had so many opportunities for him. So there's a measure of like safety you feel. So in your helping professional,
there for sure.
Yeah, like if you don't have that safety and that trust in your helping professionals, like go to the next one, find the next one. Like don't waste your damn time. Go find the next person to add to your toolkit. There's a model they have in like social services called like a wraparound model. And it was this cool program where kids in care or kids who needed additional supports got to build their own circle of care, their own people around them. And then in order for decisions to be made about that young person, that young person decided who was at the table. So they could have their friend there. They could have a parent there. They could have a professional there. They could have whomever they wanted. And so when you think about creating your toolkit or your wraparound circle, you know, make sure that you are empowered in that decision. And easier said than done, I know, in a world ran by money where things are expensive. But when all else fails, find a peer support worker, because peer support workers are a lot more chill and a lot more cheap. So
yeah, chill and cheap. It's the way to go.
But we're coming to a conclusion, a beautiful, fast conversation it feels like, but I know there's a wealth of knowledge. But as always, Bronwynn, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Miss you.
And if you are listening, please continue to listen. Please continue to write your own fucking story. Build your own wraparound care team. feel empowered as best you can as we navigate this hellish, capitalist, complex fucking world. I'm wishing you all the best on your... And trust your gut. And take your fiber pills. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.